Schnapps podcast.
I'm Abby Glassenberg. My guests on the show today are Amie Plumley and Van't Hul. Amie Plumley is passionate about teaching children to sew. She's a second grade teacher and the co-author of 2 books, Sewing School, 21 sewing projects kids will love to make, and Sewing School 2, Lessons in Machine Sewing, both published by Story. Amie co-founded a popular sewing school day camp and oversees a sewing after-school program. She lives in Memphis, Tennessee with her husband, 2 children, and a dog named Tug. Amie Plumley, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Van't Hul is passionate about children's art and creativity. On her blog, The Artful Parent, Jean shares ideas, information, and inspiration to encourage you to enjoy and share art with the kids in your life, whether in your home or your classroom. Jean's first book, The Artful Parent, was published by Roost in 2013. Her second book, The Artful Year, will come out in February of 2015. Jean lives with her husband and 2 daughters in the mountains of western North Carolina. Van't Hul, welcome.
So glad to be here.
Yay. So I'm excited to talk with both of you today about making art and craft with children. So let's start with you, Amie. I know you teach elementary school. What gave you the idea to teach kids to sew, and how did you learn to sew?
Well, I've been sewing as long as I can remember, and so I still sew today for myself and for my family. And I went into teaching kind of as a second career because I wanted to do something creative, but I also knew I was wanting to have a family, and I wanted something that was kind of stable. And as soon as I started teaching kindergarten, I'm lucky to work at a school that kind of allows me to kind of put things into the curriculum as I see fit. And I started to realize, oh, I think we can sew here. And so we started by making just really simple, like little stuffed animals, just little pouches and purses and things like that. And as I continued to sew with kids, I started to develop tools that worked better for them. The very beginning, I was using like really skinny, sharp needles, and I was, trying to take apart embroidery thread. They come in 6 strands and making them 3. And the kids, I would have a line of 15 kids waiting to get a needle from me. And that was kind of stressful. And as I've gone along, I've developed tools that work for kids, that puts them in the creative position, allows them to have some independence in sewing. And it kind of has all blossomed from there, I guess.
Okay. So, I want to hear a little bit more about what sort of methods you ended up adopting that worked better, because I have taught, I've taught my own kids to sew, but I've also taught Girl Scout troops locally, just where I live, just because people know me as the sewing teacher. And so I get asked sometimes to teach, Girl Scout troops, they do a sewing badge. And so I come in and teach them. And you're right that if you bring in the little needles, and then the thread always falls off the needle, because, and so that becomes a problem. And there's lots of knots also, everything gets tied in a knot. All kinds of issues you run into really quickly. And so tell us a couple of really good tips that you've developed to make all of that process go smoothly.
Yeah, well, I think when I'm sewing, first I'll talk about the tools. So I think the tools are key for me, especially when you're talking about younger children sewing. So I use Chanel number 2 needles, which are still sharp, but they're a little bit thicker, so little hands can grip them.
So it's sorry to interrupt. That's a chenille needle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Number 22.
Number 22. Okay.
And then I use craft thread, which is what is sold in packages, I think, to make friendship bracelets with. And you can buy both those things at any box kind of retail craft store.
Okay. And this craft thread, it kind of looks like embroidery floss in that it's kind of in those same kind of skeins, right? Where it's got a little band at the top and a little band at the bottom, and it comes in a rainbow pack. But it's different from embroidery floss. So how is it different? It's non-divisible, so you can't break it up into strands. It's like pearl cotton, okay,
which I like to do embroidery with as well, but it's a little bit thicker. And you do have to, I do take it off of the skeins and I put it onto a little paper bobbin just so that the kids can
It gets tangled.
Yeah, because it gets tangled really quick. And my husband laughs at me because I have done hundreds of them in the car. Like, as we're riding around, like I have my little stash, and he's like, I've watched you, wind probably thousands of bobbins.
Totally. So
it's like my habit.
So when are you pre-threading the chenille needles for them?
Not at first. I might, but I do try really quickly to teach them how to thread a needle. And I use the low ran needle threader, which is a metal needle threader that doesn't have like that little wire part on it. It has a little wire hook that fits through the needle eye really easily. And then you can grab the thread on the other side and pull it out.
Got it.
And once kids learn how to do that, which they can usually learn in kindergarten, I've been able to teach kids, it's like magic. It's like a whole new world has opened up for them for sewing because they no longer need an adult to help them to sew anymore. And they're just off and running.
Okay, so do you have them make a doubled length of the thread and not the end so it doesn't fall off the needle? Or do you just have it one, a knot on the end, a single length of thread, and then when it falls off the needle, you just have them re-thread the needle and they learn quickly how to make it like sort of hold the eye when they're sewing so it doesn't fall off?
You got it. Yeah,
Okay.
So we do a knot at one end.
Okay.
I think the double thickness is too thick, especially because I'm sewing a lot with like felt. It just gets to be too thick. So, and the thread is thicker. We talk a lot about pinching the needle. So as they poke it through, I tell them to pinch at the eye and then pull. And after a couple of times, you're right. Once they kind of realize that it keeps falling off, they get frustrated, and then they'll take the time to move their finger down and pinch it and pull.
Right. And if they have that needle threader there, they can fix it themselves too.
That's
which is
right.
hugely helpful. But it's still a little bit of a pain because it kind of slows them down. And so they want to develop a technique that makes it so it doesn't fall off, because that is a big issue, falling off the needle.
You're right. And yeah. I think you totally get it. I think if you're giving the kids the tools and you're kind of putting them in the position of you need to do this yourself, they'll figure that out. There's always one or two that I'm helping through the entire process. And that's okay. But I sew with like 50 kids at a time sometimes. So I need them to be independent. And I can handle 3 or 4 that need my assistance. But the rest of them don't want to wait for me.
And do you learn. Yeah, I bet they don't. Do you have like a first project that you sort of have everybody go through? Because I also teach an adult sewing class here locally at a sewing school, and it's actually, I'm the only adult instructor. So the rest of the time, that sewing school is all for kids. And my kids have gone there too. And so I know that there's like this one project she has everybody do first, sort of as like almost like a training project. So do you have like a first project that you have everybody kind of start with? And then do you let them kind of go from there and choose their own thing? Or is everybody working on the same thing at the same time? I start every session of my camp out and club with a project. It differs because I have a lot of repeat customers, so I can't do the same project every time. But my favorite starting project is my stuffy, and it's in the First Sewing School book. And you draw your own picture on a piece of muslin with markers or fabric markers or crayons, and then you turn it into like basically a pillow. And I love that project because it really immediately allows those kids to be creative. It's immediate success. They love whatever they make, and it just gives them a chance to really practice their stitches, and they want to, and how to stuff something, because a lot of kids like to stuff. So that's my favorite starting project. But I do, every time I do a class, or like I start a session up for my sewing club, I always have this is the first project we're all doing. I call it a have to. And then after that, I do open it up to whatever they want to make. I usually have projects and examples of things, ideas, but then I will let them take it further. And I like to call my projects in the book blank slates because they're very simple. They're very easy. But I hope that what they do is allow a lot of creativity. So I love to see a kid take a project and turn it up on its head and do something completely different, but they're using the same pattern and ideas. Right. So let's actually talk a little bit more about your books. So you wrote both of them with your partner in crime, Andrea Lyle. Is that how you say her name? Lyle. Okay.
Yes.
And I have both books. My kids and I have made many of the projects from both of them. And in fact, there's a photo in the second book of an adult sewing machine set up and then a child's sewing machine set up right next to it. Sort of at a lower table with their own kind of stuff right next to it. And when I first got your second book, I sat and stared at that photo for so long. And it was like a light bulb went off, and I immediately ordered my kids their own sewing machine and set it up. Like, we went and got a table, and I set it up right next to mine, and that's where it is now. And they will go up there completely on their own, and they have their own fabric stash, and they will make stuff. And I just think it's so great. So that was a huge revelation to me. So thank you for that photo that's in there. So tell us a little bit about sort of the two books and what's in them and how they're different from one another.
Thanks. Oh, I love your story, by the way. That's actually my craft room. So that's what's in my house right now. So, and that's my daughter's sewing machine. The books kind of came about because my friend Andrea and I were teaching a camp. My camp got a little bit bigger for me just to handle by myself. So I got her to help me. And at the time, she was a freelance writer. So she had lots of free time on her hands in a schedule that was very flexible. And so we had this camp. We were coming up with designs. We were coming up with ideas kind of based on what the kids wanted. And we were also looking around at the same time for, are there other patterns? Are there books out there that can help us, guide us through these camps? And we couldn't find anything that we liked. So one day I looked at her. I was like, you know what we need to do? And she answered my sentence by saying, write a book, and kind of the rest is history. It did take us about 2 years to write our proposal, though, because in the meantime, I got pregnant again, and she had some things going on in her life, but we finally got it together, and we're just thrilled to work with Story. At that time, we kind of targeted them because they were really coming out with some beautiful crafting books, and we wanted our book to look like the modern Japanese cool craft books that we were reading. And we wanted that for children. And we really wanted it to be aesthetically pleasing. That was our biggest complaint with a lot of children's sewing books at the time, is they were kind of silly. They were cartoony. And they were nothing that I would want to read. So the first book mostly focuses on hand sewing. All of the projects were kid tested in our camps. A lot of them were inspired by kids. And all the kids that you see are kids that either came to my camp or I taught in my classroom in the book. And then about a year later, we had a lot of people emailing us like they wanted more machine sewing. They wanted to see, their kids were really wanting to sew with machines. And about that time, I was doing more machine sewing with students and kids. And my own daughter was sewing in a sewing machine. So I started to feel more comfortable with that. And so we started to develop patterns that went along with that book as well. And pretty much made it exactly the same process of one-on-one shooting. We had an amazing photographer, Justin Burke, and he just really worked well with the kids and was there for every step of the way for the book with us.
I think having a great photographer for a kid's sewing book is really important to achieving that aesthetic that you were looking for, where it is sophisticated. It is going to be appealing to the adults who are working with, if it's their child or if it's in an after-school program or a Girl Scout troop or whatever. It's going to be appealing to both adults and kids. It's not just sort of, as you said, sort of silly, but it's actually a really beautiful book too. And I think that having the photographer and the designer, have that sophisticated eye is really important. And Story did a great job with both of your books. So congratulations to you on both of them. I really think you added to the resources available for people like me who needed something like this. So they're really super. And I love how well tested they are, that they really were tested by and used by real kids in a real environment, and not just like a designer coming up with them and thinking they might be fun for kids, but not actually testing them with lots of different kids. So,
no, I thank you. And I think, too, what's interesting is trying to figure out the whole pattern making process with kids. I was thinking about that when I was thinking about what to talk about today, and making patterns for children and making patterns for adults is a vastly different thing. Like, I've even taken some of your patterns, Abby, and kind of was like, I really like that, but the kid's not going to be able to figure that out. So how can I make that simple? Or like every single one of my patterns is symmetrical, because it has to be. And that way a kid can flip it over. It doesn't matter which side of the pattern they trace it on or the fabric, it's going to work. So I've learned a lot of these just little tips, I think, as I've gone along.
Yeah, because what can happen is, the kids are really excited and they're working on it, and they get 3/4 of the way done, and then they come up and show you, and it's because like the pattern wasn't symmetrical, for example, it's flipped the wrong way, or the two pieces don't line up, or the wrong side of the fabric is facing out, or whatever. So yeah, you do over time develop those little tricks to say, okay, if I design the pattern in this more simple way, the finished product will be easier to get to and just as cute.
Yes, that's a lot of it.
Yeah, totally. All right, Jean, I want to turn to you. I have been reading your blog, The Artful Parent, for so many years, and I feel like I've watched your daughters, Maya and Daphne, grow up and make countless sun catchers with you. And I always look forward to just the glimpses into your home and your cherry pie making and your beanpole teepee in your garden and all of the things. I feel like I know you through your blog. So for me, your blog makes making art with children just feel really approachable. And I wondered what kind of work you did before you had kids, and if you ever expected to become so fascinated with making art with kids.
Well, thank you, Abby, first for your words of welcome and talking about how you feel like my kids and my family, and I really do try to make art approachable. I kind of feel like that's my thing. As far as my background, I never figured this into my life. I never saw this in my future. I loved art always. Growing up, I loved making art. I studied art in college. I worked in the art field after college, but never thought of myself as an art teacher for children or anything along those lines. It just developed over time.
So I know you went to Wellesley because I live in Wellesley, and we've talked about this before. So were you an art major at Wellesley?
I was, yes. Okay. Art history and studio art. Okay, great. And they have a really good program. So what kind of work, you said you worked in an art-based field after college? Well, my first job out of college was working at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. I worked there as a preparator in the matting and framing artworks on paper and helping to put up exhibitions at the museum. I also worked at an online art and antique site, and then at the Catalog of Antiques and Fine Art, which is now named something a little bit different. I think it's just Antiques and Fine Art, an art magazine.
Okay. Wow. So that's so interesting. So all of these things are kind of related to, but quite different from what you do now. Did you ever consider becoming a teacher? I
don't think that it suits my personality. I really like sharing art in the way that I do, doing it in small groups or just with my children, and then writing about it on my blog, writing about it in magazine articles, writing about it on social media or in my books. I feel like that way I get to share it in the way that I think reaches the most people, and also suits my more introverted personality. Yeah, and I think you're really observant about the way that the project develops with kids. So, you'll talk about a particular project or materials that you set out for your children, and they'll work on it in one way. And then, it starts to sort of morph into something else where, you'll put out shaving cream and paint, for example, and they'll start out, doing sort of the project that you thought they would first like doing. And then they start, painting it on their arms and then on their feet. Right. And then they start making footprints and handprints. And, so it sort of morphs into something different. And then they add a different material to it. And then it becomes even, a third thing. So, and I think you're very, first you're brave in allowing them to sort of get along their own lines. Which I think Amie also pointed to, but you're also very observant in sort of seeing how they perceive it and what their next idea is.
Well, thank you. I do believe in process-oriented art and seeing where the art materials and techniques and the ideas that the kids have and where it can all take us. And art is not a static thing at all. Kids' art, definitely not so. No one's art is. And there's it's an infinite mix and match world out there. There's so many possibilities. And I like keeping that open.
Yeah. What do you say to, and I'm sure you run into this sometimes with blog readers probably, what do you say to parents who are like, well, I myself am not good at art, and so I don't feel comfortable, doing this with my kids. Like my husband, he actually is quite good at art and has a great eye, but he feels like he's not good at art. And so if there's Play-Doh out or watercolors out, he sort of shies away, like that's mommy's thing, because he just doesn't have that level of comfort with the materials. So if you're the primary caregiver, though, of the children, the stay-at-home mom or the stay-at-home dad, and you want to bring this, into their day-to-day lives, but you just don't feel comfortable with art materials yourself, how do you approach that?
Well, I want to say to everyone out there who feels that way, you don't have to feel like you are great at art in order to offer art opportunities to your kids. You can just approach it in a childlike way. You can put out the most simple art materials, just make the art materials available. Play-Doh, crayons, markers, paper, and make them available to your kids. You don't have to have a degree in studio art in order to give them the materials they need, and they don't need instruction necessarily. They might need a little bit of guidance, a little bit of encouragement, but you don't have to be great at art or to feel that you are great at art in order to give them what they need to be artists and to grow creatively themselves. What I like to suggest to parents is to sit down next to your kid. If you set out paper and markers for your child, sit down next to them. Get a piece of paper yourself, doodle, just whatever. Fill the paper with color, anything, and just explore. Just think of it as the process, not the product. The same way I think of it for kids. I think parents can explore art that way too, and it can be healing. It can give you confidence, and it can be a lot of fun, and it can be a way to connect with your kids also.
And I think sometimes kids' materials are really kind of humble. You can buy a 49-cent pack of crayons and a piece of, computer paper. So it's not like a beautiful sketchbook and, expensive pastels or something like that. And so sometimes that barrier, just having sort of humble materials that are easy to throw away if you mess up or whatever, can help parents kind of just jump in and make a line and, not worry so much.
Right, exactly. And I think simple is great. Simpler is better. The simple materials, the simple art activities, there is so much that you can do with them.
Yeah, let's turn to your book, The Artful Parent. So what kinds of activities will we find in there to sort of guide us through this process?
In the Artful Parent, there are lots and lots of fun activities, all different kinds, painting activities, drawing games, collage, all those sun catchers that we love. Just more than enough, I think, to keep any kid or any family creating. And a lot of these activities, like marble rolling paint-covered marbles around on paper, or sun catchers, you can do over and over. You can do it in lots of different ways. And I don't think kids don't seem to get tired of them. There are always different variations of them, or the children come at them at different times in their lives, or when they have different ideas going on in their heads, and so they might approach it a little bit differently. There are a lot of really basic art activities that, depending on what's going on in your life and what colors you're interested in and what materials you are using, you can do it in so many different ways.
Yeah, so you can come back and do those same activities again.
Mm-hmm. Totally. That's right.
All right, I want to talk a little bit about setting up an area for kids to sew or for kids to make art, whether it's at home or in an after-school setting or a club setting, that kind of thing. Because I think one of the big fears we face sometimes as adults is the mess, right? Like when you think about, their house is tidy, the kids are at school, they're going to come home. And if I set out this, art or craft or sewing experience for them, we're going to just have glitter and paint and uncapped markers and scissors and spills and ruined clothes or whatever, right? There's that sort of fear of mess. So even if we have really good intentions to make art with children, sometimes just that thought can kind of feel overwhelming. So I wanted to kind of touch on that and think about how you approach either keeping things tidy or setting up systems so that the kids can themselves keep things tidy or tidy up easily at the end, or just kind of let go during the process and let the mess be there within constraint, obviously. So, Amie, do you have tips from your experience about constraining the mess? I mean, if you're sewing with 50 kids, right, there must be some good systems in place.
I try. But as you were describing that mess, I was thinking about my husband, who is like deathly afraid, I think, of my creative family going crazy. But I do. I have like different, especially when I'm setting up a room, I have the supplies, if I'm working with a class, in different areas of the room. So they don't all bunch up together. And I'll have this is the needle threading station. This is the stuffing station. This is where the felt fabric goes, that kind of thing. At my home, I have, next to my sewing machine is my daughter's sewing machine. And underneath that, she has a big old bin. And in the bin is where she keeps her fabric and stuff like that. And then, yes, it's kind of messy, but she just shoves it in there, and then we can push it under. And she has her little sewing box that she can keep her tools and her threads and things like that in. So I think giving kids their own, especially sewers, having their own sewing box, having their own bin to keep their own fabric in, really helps them to have that sense of independence. This is mine. I need to take care of it. I'm not going to share my scissors with my daughter, and she knows that. Scissors are gold to me, right? So she keeps her own scissors in her own box. And I think that having that system kind of set up at the beginning helps us a lot.
Yeah, definitely. I have a similar system set up, and I agree with you. They have their own scissors. And so, Jean, what about you? I know you have a studio sort of set up in your home. I don't know. Is it like where your laundry room is? I can't quite remember.
Yes. We have a rather large laundry room, and we turned it into our art studio. And the laundry is still in there, but they play together well. The floor is a cement floor that we painted over, so I don't worry about the messes back there quite so much. But I also know that lots of people don't have a whole room that they dedicate to art, and we have done art in lots of different places. We actually don't do the majority of our art back there. We do the majority of our art just at our kitchen table, and sometimes I'll lay down a waterproof tablecloth. I'll just get a cheap one at the dollar store, and that works out really well for protecting the table from messes. We also use art mats, these large plastic art mats that I love, that I bought from Discount School Supply, and they help to contain the mess also. Plus, there are so many art activities that aren't actually all that messy. And sometimes we do art outside. You can do art in the kitchen, where it's generally easier to clean up, or in the bathtub. You can do painting in the bathtub. There are lots of ways to get around the mess issue. And of course, in the summer when the weather is nice, you can do a lot more outside. It gets harder when the weather is not so nice.
Yeah, and you guys both live in the South. In comparison to me, where the weather is not nice, I feel like 11 months. Maybe not 11, but
I have lived there, so I know what it's like.
We're inside where it's cold for a long time, so we definitely struggle with that. But one of the other things I think that can be hard to manage with kids, with my own kids, is frustration. So my eldest daughter is 10, and she is incredibly imaginative. She's like a natural storyteller. She's got a million ideas. But she also just gets really frustrated, easily and quickly. And so, like, if she's trying to stick a pipe cleaner on something and it won't stick, or she's, trying to thread the needle and it's unthreaded, she just gets so frustrated. And then she's also recently started saying, she said to me the other day, she said, "I'm not good at art." And I was like, no, like heartbroken, because she's going to like an arts-based camp, and there's some kids at this camp who are, really gifted, but they're also older than she is. But that at 10, I feel like that kind of self-consciousness starts to creep in. So I wanted to sort of think about managing frustration with kids and art making and craft making, and also self-doubt, which I think starts to affect kids as they get a little bit older. So, Jean, do you have thoughts about either of those things?
I think that's a difficult question, and I would take it on a case-by-case scenario with children. Everyone's so different. But I would also suggest talking about and looking at art there's so many different kinds of art. There is art that, extreme realism, and then there is art that is, very abstract, and neither is better than the other. There's art that's mostly about colors and how they interact, and there's art that is more about design. There are so many different kinds of art that someone who looks at their the kid sitting next to them and watches them draw a very realistic scene might get frustrated with their own drawing ability, but if they thought of themselves as an artist, realized how many different kinds of art there are and what they enjoy and different, what is possible, then maybe they wouldn't get as frustrated. Another thing I would suggest is getting a copy of the book Beautiful Oops, and also The Da is a good one. All of Peter Reynolds' books are for self-confidence in creativity.
I love that title, Beautiful Oops. That's great.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that one out. I'll try to link.
It's good for kids and for adults, I think.
I bet. Yeah, totally. Because so many great things really, I mean, as a designer, a pattern designer, I feel like so many great things come from those mistakes. Like some of the most brilliant things come from like an accident, So.
Right.
Totally. And Amie, do you have any thoughts about, like, I'm sure you run into all kinds of learners as a teacher. So, I'm sure there are kids who are like my daughter who get really frustrated really quickly. So what kinds of, things do you do to sort of help them to regroup?
Well, it's so funny that Jean mentioned Beautiful Oops, because that was immediately put into my head, because I adore that book as well, Jean, and I use that a lot in my class. But my mantra in my classroom for both sewing and in my teacher life is nothing has to be perfect, just do your best. And I repeat that a lot in my class, and it's written really big on my wall. And I think that reminding kids that nothing has to be perfect. Mistakes are okay. How can you use this mistake to turn it into something cool? And when somebody does do that, we celebrate that and we show it off. Like, wow, this person had a big hole, but then look how they fixed it. Or one arm ended up only having one arm, but now they have a one-arm monster, so you can kind of play with that and show kids and celebrate that unexpectedness that sometimes happens when we're creating. It didn't turn out like it looks in my head. But now I have this, and it's pretty cool too. So I do a lot of that with kids, and I try not to let them restart again and again and again, maybe once or twice, or, especially if they're old enough, we'll take out the stitches and that kind of thing and learn how not to do that again. But if it's something that can be tweaked, I really encourage them to tweak. Because I think, especially what's happening to your daughter, it's happening to mine too. She's going into 4th grade, and she suddenly is becoming that self-consciousness. She doesn't have that freedom that she used to have in just her thoughts and the way she just doesn't care anymore.
Right.
And I'm like, no, don't lose that part of you, because, right. and I think that's where a lot of the sewing school, the way the projects are designed and the way they kind of look comes from wanting to hang on to that creativity of a child, that sense of you can make this be whatever you want it to be. It doesn't have to look like mine. Because that stresses me out, even, looking at my own craft, looking at other craft books, and I want to make that dress, but mine doesn't quite look like that, and you start to compare yourself to what other people are doing, either around you or professionally. So I really wanted kids to get that sense of you can do what you want. In the sewing books, we have a Make It Yours section for every project. And all of those are examples that kids made where they took the project and changed it. And I think that is very freeing for kids. Like, yeah, I know it says, for them to read the directions and be like, yeah, I know it says to do that, but I don't want to do that. I want to add a button instead. Or I want to close this with Velcro. And to allow them to play around with that.
Yeah, totally. And as an adult following directions, that's actually sort of the way I do it too.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, okay, yeah, but I'm going to do it upside down because I like it this way better. All right. So I want to dive into our list of recommendations. I've asked both of you to pull together a list of things that you're enjoying right now, and I've pulled together my list too. So, Amie, we'll start with you, and you wanted to talk about something from The Small Object, which is a small handmade business by Sarah Newberger.
Yes, I love The Small Object. I've been a big fan for years, and hopefully everyone already knows about it, but just in case they don't, their little needle cases that's one of my most prized possessions. Like, I love her little needle case, and I take it around with me all the time. But she also has just such great, cute stamps. You can get a stamp that looks like you. It's kind of amazing, but it's drawn with Sarah's cute little drawings. I don't know, it just makes me really happy to go to her website and find things. And they make really cute gifts, and they're kind of unexpected, I think. So
her needle case, it's almost like a wooden tube, right?
Yes, it's kind of like a toothpick holder or something like that.
Right.
But it just, I have needles stuck in pincushions like all over the place. But this is just so perfect for carrying around with you, especially if you're traveling, or even if you're traveling from your upstairs to your downstairs to sew, which I do a lot. just to kind of keep them all tidy and together. And there's just something magical about opening it up and, pouring out a little needle for myself. So
one of the things that she makes that I love are her celebration candles. So they look like, it's almost like a clothespin sort of, but it has a pick at the bottom, and she's made it look like a little kid and with little fabric outfit and everything, but it's totally painted and then sealed and has a hole in the top of the head where you can put a birthday candle. So you can put it into a cupcake, or you can get a bunch of them and put them into a cake, and they're so adorable. I just think that would be such a special thing to have as a tradition for your birthday. So the celebration candles are really cute too. So it's a good pick. Jean, you wanted to talk about liquid watercolors. I have to say I don't have these, so I'm interested to hear about them.
Oh, no, you must get liquid watercolors. We have loved liquid watercolors for so many years now. And if I had to choose one art material, it would probably be liquid liquid watercolors. They are vibrant. The color is very vibrant. They're easy to use. Whereas, the watercolor cakes in a tin can be a little difficult for younger children, especially, who might want to dip their paintbrush in one color and then another until it's all one big muddy mess, which, is okay for experimenting, but doesn't end up, it's just not as easy to use. So liquid watercolors are easy to use and colorful. We use them straight up just for painting. We use them for watercolor resist art projects. Salty watercolors is one of our favorite art activities. It works on paper. They work on wood. They work on coffee filters. They work on canvas. They work on so much and for so many different kinds of art activities, and even for science. We use them for this ice melting experiment that we do, milky fireworks, painted daisies. There's shaving cream, marbling. There's just so much that you can do with liquid watercolors that we love them.
So when you buy them, do they come in a tube? Do they come in a jar? Like what does it look like?
I buy ours from Discount School Supply, but I think they're pretty standard. There are other brands out there. They come in. It's not a tube like the paste that you mix with water. It's like a paint. I want to say jar. It has but that's not quite the right word.
So it's maybe like a squeeze jar?
Right,
okay.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so, like a bottle.
Yeah, a bottle. So I'll squeeze some into a cup, and then we'll use it from the cup. Or I get this little 6 cups in a base, and I can put with little cups, and I'll put some liquid watercolor of each color in each of those little cups, and then we can use them that way.
And do you have to mix water into them?
No, you don't. That's the good thing about them, is that they are ready to go when they arrive. That they're all set, and you can use them as is. You can water them down if you like. If you want a lighter color, or if you want them to last longer, you can water them down, and that's fine. But you don't have to. They're all set to go.
Tell us about, because I love it, the salty watercolors, because I think, first of all, it has an intriguing name, and also I know it's one of your favorite things to do. So, and your kids are often like, let's just add some salt to any other project. So how does that work, and why does it work?
Okay, so just adding salt to watercolors is lots of fun, because the salt crystals absorb the water around it, and it creates a pattern and concentrates the watercolors in different areas. So that's beautiful. Salty watercolors is something, it's the name of an art project that we do, where we take a glue bottle, like a bottle of Elmer's glue or something, and squeeze out a picture on a piece of watercolor paper or cardstock or something. Either you can do a face, or you can do something abstract, whatever. And then you sprinkle salt over the top of that glue to completely cover the glue. And then what you do is you take a paintbrush and dip it in your watercolors, in your liquid watercolors, and then touch it just touch it gently to one of those salt-covered glue lines, and the paint travels along, and it's just so cool to watch. Kids love it. I love it. Everyone loves it. And then it dries and looks cool too, but actually watching the paint travel along the salt-covered glue lines is a lot of fun for kids.
So does the glue have to be dry first?
It doesn't. No, we've done it both ways. Usually we don't have the patience to wait for it to dry. We just do it right away, and it works just fine.
Okay, cool. And just to go back to the initial one, you paint a watercolor painting, and then you sprinkle salt on top, and then it kind of pulls the color into the salt crystals, and that makes the sort of interesting patterns on the paper.
Exactly. And we do it with different kinds of salt. You can buy fine salt, like the cheap Morton salt, or you can use kosher salt or sea salt. It works differently with different sizes and types of salt crystals.
That's so neat. Yeah, so neat, and very process-based, because, the product is going to be pretty too, but the process of watching what the salt does is almost like a science project in and of itself.
Exactly, and science and art go together so well. There's so much overlap.
Yeah, that's neat. I think my middle daughter would love that. She's kind of really interested in science. So, one of my my recommendations are stickers that are eyes. Okay, so we have this sheet of stickers, and they're all they are eyes, and they're black, line drawings of eyes, and that's all that's on the sticker sheet. And I kind of save it. We have a big box of stickers, and the kids can use them all the time, and they use them for all sorts of things, but I kind of save the eyes for a specific project. So there's something about starting with a set of eyes that's really freeing and inspires a lot of neat creativity. And I feel like, we initially found these at a science museum. Actually, they had like a kids activity set up, and the thing that they had were lots of collage materials and these stickers that were eyes. And it was so neat to see what everybody made, and it's sort of open-ended. It's kind of just gets you started. And so we'll just, I'll put them out, and they'll take 2 eyes, or sometimes many more than 2 eyes, and put them on a piece of paper, and then draw around it, and all kinds of neat monsters and animals and all sorts of things come out of just that little, it's almost like a starter to a creative project. So I really like my eye stickers. They're not googly eyes. They're just regular eyes. And they're really cool. Have you guys ever played with those?
I haven't, no. I've seen them, and we always have googly eyes, so I didn't think that I needed both, but now I think maybe I have to give them a try.
Yeah, there's something neat about them. They're a little bit more expressive than a googly eye, because some of them have eyelashes. They're different. There's like a couple of different drawings of different eyes on there. So I think they're really neat. And speaking of googly eyes, my 3-year-old 2 weeks ago, she came up from camp with a project she made with googly eyes, and then was on her own for just a little while I was busy cooking, and took a googly eye off her project and put it up her nose. And it was really far up her nose, and we had to go to the emergency room to have it removed. So,
goodness.
Have you guys had those emergency art experiences with kids?
That may be a first.
So when we got there, the doctor was like, "Oh, we see this all the time."
Really?
Yes.
My brother did that with a bean once, apparently, and beans swell, so it was a bit harder to get out.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it. Yeah. All right. So anyway, FYI on the googly eyes. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, all right. So I wanted to go back to you, Amie, and I want to talk about, you do something that I do all the time that I think is really brilliant, and I actually tell my adult students this. You buy old sheets and use them to make muslins. So tell me about that.
Yes. That's how every time I buy like a new pattern and I want to try to make myself like a new dress, especially, I am really worried about cutting into my $12 a yard fabric. And so I just started making things out of sheets. And the reason I like to make it out of sheets, especially cute sheets, is that if it works out for you, you can continue to wear it. So I have a lot of dresses made from sheets, and then I'll go and I'll make it again, and I'll tweak it, and I'll make it in my super cute fabric. But I also found that sheets are great for working with kids because, once again, I don't want to spend a ton of money on sometimes these projects. But the kids want to make like wedding dresses or like who knows what, these crazy capes and things like that. But if I buy sheets for $1 at the thrift store and wash them really well, or garage sale, and send them on their merry way, they have yards of fabric to create with. So they wrap them around themselves, or they'll make, we've made a lot of puppet show theaters with them. They'll make all sorts of things with them. So that's kind of my go-to fabric, especially when I'm teaching a camp and I'm kind of letting it be freeform in terms of what they're able to make. And they love it because the patterns you can find and the colors and the yardage is just incredible out there. But I do use a lot of sheets for myself as well.
Yeah, I think kind of speaks to this idea of plenty. Like sometimes when materials are scarce or, you've been told they're expensive, you kind of feel creatively inhibited. But yes, when you just have a ton of it, you're more free to kind of make mistakes, or if it doesn't work out, you can throw it away. And even as adults, I feel like that having plenty of something can sometimes be the ticket to being more creative.
Yeah, I never actually thought of it that way, but that's exactly what it is. I can totally feel free. I mean, I ended up making this super cute dress like a couple of weeks ago because I really wanted to try to make one with a bodice, and I never had really made like a fitted dress. And I pulled out a sheet that had been my grandmother's that I loved, and took a chance on it. And now it's so cute, but I felt very free in making it, and ended up making the top more than once, but I had plenty of fabric. So you're right. It lets you kind of be creative and be brave maybe in what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I had an incident, a couple of months ago. I ordered a really big lot wholesale of safety eyes, and prior to then I would only use a few safety eyes. Like I had just a few precious ones that I was kind of hoarding, because I don't know why. I just would have like a few in each size, and I would, buy like a pair in each size, and that's all I had. And so it was like if I was going to use them, it really had to be for the right project, it was like pressure. Yes. So I ordered this gigantic box, and now I feel so free. Like if I, use them on a prototype, or I use them on what I think is going to be the final sample, and then I finish, and I'm like, I still have some tweaks to make on this. I'm going to have to throw this one away. I feel like, all right, whatever. It's okay. Like, and somehow getting like a million safety eyes just really was so freeing to me. It sounds bizarre, but it is totally true. I think plenty is useful for creativity. So, so Jean, you wanted to talk about a book that I just looked up after you recommended it to me, and it looks so good. It's the Tinker Lab book by Rochelle Dorley.
Yes, Raquel.
Oh, I'm sorry, Raquel.
Dorley, yeah. It is a wonderful book about for kids and families, about inspiring creativity through tinkering and experimenting and using that sort of as a way of living and learning, making experimenting a priority in any area like art, science, cooking, construction, as a way to raise creative kids, to raise the next generation to be creative and to be able to think for themselves. And I just think it's a brilliant book. And she has a blog as well, also called Tinker Lab.
Which looks fantastic. Yeah. I'm going to subscribe to it. I had heard of it before, but for some reason I wasn't subscribing, and I was looking there this morning, and there's a project that immediately, of course, caught my eye, where you take apart a stuffed animal, like a commercially made stuffed animal, and see what's inside of it. Like, just cut it apart and take out the stuffing and take off just take the arms off and the legs off and see how it's all made, and then think about using some of those pieces to make something new.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And she does that with other things as well, taking things apart, which is a great way to learn about everything around us, for kids as well as adults.
Yeah, I think about my brother. He used to take apart like every electronic thing in our house as a kid, much to my parents' dismay. But it is a really good way to learn like how it's all wired together. And be creative and make new things. And Jean, I also wanted to make sure we talked about magnetic tiles, because I know you're recently obsessed with magnetic tiles, and we have them too. We have Magnetile brand, and it is our favorite toy. So just tell us a little bit about the magnetic tiles you have and how your kids use them.
I have to say it's our favorite toy as well. It's the toy that gets used the most inside our house over and over again. We've had them for 7 months now, and they get used almost every day in so many different ways. We don't have the Magnetiles. We have 2 other sets, 2 different brands. One is the Building Brilliance magnetic shapes, which is sold by Discount School Supply, and then we also have one called Picasso tiles, which I ordered through Amazon. And both of them, they work together just fine. I don't know about other brands, but I imagine all the different brands are fairly comparable. But they're great for open-ended building and creative play. We use ours. The kids use them to build things like towers and barns for the toy animals and such. But they also use them on the fridge, or to create shape patterns or roads. They use them in the window as like a stained glass. Use them on the light table, and our light table is just a transparent plastic storage box with a string of Christmas lights in it. We've used them in the sandbox and in the bathtub. They are a bit expensive.
They are.
And I've had parents talk about that, like it's been a barrier to them getting them. But they are used so much that I think it's worth it if you can figure it out. And I have heard from some of my readers who said that they have had a set of magnetic tiles that have been in use pretty much nonstop for like 7 years, and multiple kids, multiple ages, and still are in use.
Yes, and I'm one of those people, because we first got them when my oldest daughter was 2 and she's 10 now, and they are still in use, and all 3 kids who are 10, 8, and 3 all still think they're great, all can play with them independently. So just to be clear, they're like, they come in different shapes, different geometric shapes, but they're like 2 or 3 inches by 2 or 3 inches, and there's squares, there's rectangles, there's triangles, and ours actually has like a little base that is a base of a car, so you can build on that and make a car out of it. And it holds some weight, but if you put a lot, like they like to put their little figurines inside there. If you put a lot of figurines in there, it'll collapse. So there's a little bit of physics going on, like how can you make this shape sturdy? And also, I'm on a listserv of moms in my town. There's like 500 moms on this listserv, and periodically, without fail, like every 2 or 3 months, there'll be a mom on there like desperate for more Magnetiles. Because it is, I don't know how much they run, but it's like $60 or $70 for a good size box of them.
Right.
And so if you don't want yours anymore, there's a secondary market, at least where I live, for them, because they are a really good toy. So it's like a special Christmas present, something like that.
Yeah, definitely. And, sometimes I buy things, like the other day, I bought these geodes for the kids to break open, and because they were so into breaking open rocks at the time. And so I got these geodes, and they were wonderful, but they were all broken open within like an hour maybe. And so, yes, it was fun, but that wasn't money that really lasted. It wasn't a toy or a product that money didn't go very far.
Right.
Whereas with the magnetic tiles, they cost more, but they last so long and are used so often and in so many different ways that I think it's well worth it.
Yeah, they're like blocks in that way.
Right, exactly.
Totally. Well, I think we're headed up against time But this has been such an interesting and informative and fun conversation about making art and craft with kids. So, Amie and Jean, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the While She Naps podcast.
Thank you
so much. Yeah. Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. You've been listening to the While She Naps podcast. I'm Abby Glassenberg, and I invite you to visit my blog, whileshenaps.com, where you'll find helpful information for creative entrepreneurs, as well as tutorials and patterns for making stuffed animals and dolls. If you enjoy the show, tell a friend about it. Thank you so much, and see you next time.